Okay, so we're going to start reviewing for the fourth test of the third quarter. Okay, that's going to be on Friday, March 22nd. For numbers 1 through 3, we are writing the equation of the curve. So for number 1, write the equation of the trig function with an amplitude of 2. So that's done for me. An amplitude of 2. Midline y equals negative 5. Amplitude of 2. Midline y equals negative 5. A period of 2 pi. So I need the b value, so that'll help me find the b value. And passes through the point 0, comma, negative 5. That's going to be positive or negative sine or cosine that will help me with. So the amplitude is 2. The midline is y equals negative 5. The b value, 2 pi over b, is equal to the period, which in this case is 2 pi, which is over 1. If I cross multiply, I get b is equal to 1. And then to figure out whether it's positive or negative sine or cosine, that tells me the y-intercept right here. So because the y-intercept is 0, negative 5, it's definitely going to be a sine function because the y-intercept is on the midline. And then positive or negative, I actually don't know. So for this, you could have two answers. You could have y equals positive 2 sine of 1x minus 5, or you could have negative 2 sine of x minus 5 for number 1. Number 2, a little bit more complicated here because it gives you the range. So from here, you can figure out that the midline is, this one's actually pretty easy. What number is in between negative 4 and positive 4 is going to be y equals 0. Okay, so normally you could do negative 4 plus 4 if it is a more difficult one. Add them together, divide by 2, you take the average. So if my midline is y equals 0, then the amplitude is going to be 4. Then the amplitude is 4. The period will help me find the b value. So the period in this case is pi. So pi over 1 is equal to 2 pi over b. So I cross multiply and I get b is equal to 2. So b is 2. And then positive or negative sine or cosine. Because this says that it is decreasing through the origin, it looks like this. Decreasing through the origin, meaning it passes through the origin and it's decreasing through it. So because it goes through the origin, which is a point on my midline, that's going to be sine, but because it's decreasing, it's going to be negative sine. So this equation would be y equals negative 4 sine 2x and then plus 0, which you don't have to write the plus 0. Number 3, last one. So same idea, you have the range is 6 to 8. So if I do 6 plus 8 divided by 2, that gives me 7. So 14 divided by 2 is 7. So my midline is y equals 7. The amplitude then would be 1. If you're at 7, you have to go down to 6, and up to 8, you have to move a distance of 1. So the amplitude is 1. This completes 2 cycles from 0 to 2 pi. The b value is from 0 until 2 pi. How many cycles? So if it has 2 cycles from 0 to pi, it's going to have 4 cycles from 0 to 2 pi. So you can do it like that. Or you can think that the period is 1 cycle, so the period would be to pi over 2, and then you could cross multiply like we were before. So b is equal to 4, and then plus or minus sine or cosine. Increasing through the point 0, 7. So the point 0, 7 is on the midline. That's the y-intercept is on the midline. So again, this is a sine graph, and because it's increasing through that point, it is a positive sine graph. So this is y equals positive 1 sine of 4x plus 7. 4 through 6 are more graphing questions. You really should do this on the back page. Give yourself enough room. So you need a few things to graph. You need to know what is the amplitude, midline, the range is helpful, and the period is definitely necessary, okay? So for number 4, my amplitude is 4. The midline is y equals 2. So my range is from -2 until 6. You go up 4 and down 4 from 2. The period is 2 pi divided by 3 pi, which is 2 over 3. Okay? So when I graph this, again, yours should look a lot nicer than mine, but when I do graph this, I'm going from -2 up until 6, and then y equals 2 is in the middle of that. That's my y-axis. The harder part is the x-axis. So every 4 slashes is going to represent one period. So I have 4 slashes is 2 over 3. Another 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to be 4 over 3. Another 4 is 6 over 3, which is 2. I stopped there because of the domain. And then because this is a positive sine graph, my y-intercept is on the midline, and then because it's positive, I head up. So this would look something like this. Again, yours should look much, much, much neater than mine. But you do end up seeing 3 complete cycles on this interval. Something like that. Okay, make sure you're drawing hills, right? Hills, not mountains. Your graphs need to be nice and curved. Okay, for number 5, we need same information. The amplitude, the midline, range, and period. So for number 5, the amplitude is 5. The midline is y equals 3. So the range, I go from -2 up until 8. And then the period is 2 pi, I'm going to do this down here, 2 pi divided by pi over 4. When I clean that up, 2 pi over 1 times 4 over pi, I end up with 8. So the period is 8 for number 5. So when I go to graph this, so if the period is 8 and I'm supposed to graph it from 0 until 16, you're going to see 2 cycles. You're going to have to draw your 4 slashes 2 times. So I'm going from -2 all the way up to 8, with y equals 3 being in the middle. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 is 8. 1, 2, 3, 4 is 16. This is a negative cosine graph, so I start down and then I come up. So this would look nice and curved like that. And for number 6, last graphing one, the amplitude is 2. The midline is y equals 1. The range, then I'm going from -1 until 3. And then the period. The period is 2 pi divided by 2 pi over 3. So when I do keep, change, flip, I get that the period is equal to 3. So I'm graphing this from 0 until 9, so that means you're going to end up seeing 3 cycles on this interval. So if I sketch this out, I'm going from -1 until 3, and in the middle would be 1. And 1, 2, 3, 4 represents 3. This is 6. And this is 9. This is a positive cosine, so you start up at the top. Up here, down, down. It should be here. So this should look something in the ballpark of this, but nice and clean on yours. Mine looks like a mess. Okay. Numbers 7 through 10, I'm sorry. We have real world trig stuff. So what we just did, we're going to put into an actual real world example. So for number 7, it talks about the path of a roller coaster. It wants to know what is the maximum altitude. The maximum altitude is the maximum height. So I would take, for the max, I would take the midline, which is 50, and add the altitude, which is 22. So this max is going to be 72. I don't know if that's feet. I don't know if it's yards. You have no idea. So you really can only write 72. And then the minimum height is the how far down does it go. So you would go from the midline. You're going down 22. So the minimum height is 28. For number 8, this is talking about the temperature in an office controlled by a thermostat. So the temperatures vary. Y is temperature in Celsius, and T is the time in hours past midnight. So the first question, what is the temperature when people arrive at work at 9 a.m.? So 9 a.m., it's been 9 hours since midnight. So in your calculator, you should be in radian mode. For T, you are going to plug in 9. Okay? You're not plugging in 9 because it's 9 a.m. You're plugging in 9 because it's been 9 hours since midnight. So just be careful with that. If it said since 10 a.m., you're since 10 p.m. or since a different time, you're going to have to change what you're going to plug in for T. So when I plug in 9 for T, right into your calculator, 19 plus 6 times the sine of everything, you end up getting that Y is 19 degrees Celsius. Y is 19 degrees Celsius. And then the next question, it says, what are the maximum and minimum temperatures? So the maximum and minimum temperatures, that's talking about the range again. So how high up does the temperature go? How far down does the temperature go? So you would take your midline for the maximum, take your midline at 19, and add the amplitude of 6. So the maximum temperature is 25 degrees Celsius. The minimum, you would do the midline minus the amplitude and get 13 degrees Celsius. For number 8, it wants to know what is the period of the function. So the period of the function, you would do 2 pi divided by b. b is pi over 5. So I have to clean this up. So this is going to be 2 pi over 1 times 5 over pi, which gives me 10. So the period is 10, and this is in seconds. So describe what this value represents in the context. You have to, when you answer this, you have to say, if you are at the bottom of the ride, or if you're at the lowest point of the ride, it'll take you 10 seconds before you get to the lowest point again. So you have to actually write that out. I'm not going to sit here, I'm not going to write out the whole thing because then it would just take too long for the video. So just keep in mind, if you start at the bottom, if you start low, it takes 10 seconds for you to get back to the bottom again. You cannot just say it takes 10 seconds for it to make 1 revolution. You need to show that you know what 1 revolution would be in this specific example. And then number 10, normal resting blood pressure is given by that function. What is the resting blood pressure of this patient? So normally it oscillates between 120 and 180. So the maximum is 120, the minimum is 120, so is 80. So we say that that's 120 over 80. So this is also looking for the max and the min. So the max here, it would be 110 plus 32, which is 142. The min would be 110 minus 32, which would be 78. So what is the but that's not enough because it says what is the resting blood pressure of this patient? You have to write 142 over 78. For numbers 11 and 12, determine what type of study is being described and explain why. So for number 11, you are random sample of adults, ask them for their bedtime habits. The data show that people, okay, so you are asking people about their bedtime habits. That's pretty much all that you are doing. So this is an observational study. This is observational because you have no influence on the results. You are not influencing the results at all. You are merely collecting data. You are not trying to change that data in any type of way. Whereas number 12, a study randomly assigned volunteers to one of two groups. So you're breaking them into two groups. One was used to direct social media and the other could not use social media. So this is an experiment. You have two groups. Because you have two groups, you have a control group and experimental group, and you are influencing the results. You are influencing the results by giving one group social media and the other group does not get any social media. So you are trying to influence the outcome in some way. For 13 and 14, these deal with our curves. So describe whether they are normal, positively skewed, or negatively skewed, and then order the mean, median, and mode. So for number 13, this one looks like this. This has a tail to the right, so this is positively skewed. The mode, right, your mode is always the bump. So this is going to be my mode, and then the mean goes off with the tail. So the mean would be down here, and the mode would be up here, and then the median's always in the middle of them. So the mode for number 13 is less than the median, is less than the mean. Mode less than median, less than mean. The mean is the largest one for number 13. And for number 14, you see this is nice and symmetrical. So this is a normal bell curve. Whenever you have a normal curve, the median is the same thing as the mode, is the same thing as the mean. They are all equal, so really you can't list them in order from least to greatest for number 14. They are all the same. Okay, and then we have some review questions. So for number 15, its mass decreases by half. Even though it doesn't directly say it, this is talking about half-life. So you need to know the half-life formula. A equals P times 1/2, or 0.5. 1/2 raised to the time divided by H. Make sure you know these formulas. So this says how long would it be until the mass reaches whatever. So that is telling me to solve for T. I'm solving for T. A, the future amount, what I want it to reach, is 5,300. Equals P, how much you started with, is 550. 5,500, times 1/2 raised to the time is what I'm looking for. And it doesn't directly say what the half-life is, but it says every 84 years its mass decreases by half. So 84 is the half-life. So first, you would divide both sides by 5,500, and you get 0.96363. So 0.96363. You keep that number in your calculator. Equals 0.5 raised to the t over 84. Then you take the log of both sides. So this is the log of 0.96363. Equals t over 84, log of 0.5. You divide both sides by the log of 0.5. And now you have 0.05354. No, you don't. You have 0.05343 is equal to t divided by 84. And then you cross multiply. When you cross multiply, you're going to get your answer. So t is equal to 4.5 years. T is 4.5 years. For number 16, we have that special word continuously. Whenever it says continuously, you use pert. A equals pert, where R and T are your exponents. This says how many years would it take for an account balance to reach 8,000? So how many years? That's T. So I want it to reach 8,000. I originally put in 3,600. E raised to the 0.025 times T. So first I divide both sides by 3,600 and I get 2.2 repeating. So you can write out 5 decimals or you can write the 0.2 repeating. Make sure you keep that number in your calculator though. Equals E raised to 0.025t. Now, when you take the log of both sides, you should take the natural log of both sides because this is an E over here. If you end up messing up and you forget and you take the log, you still end up with the correct answer. Okay, but it is easier to take the natural log of both sides because what happens is you have the ln of 2.2 repeating is equal to 0.025t times the ln of E, but the ln of E is just 1. So you really don't have to do anything with that. So now I divide both sides by 0.025 and I get my answer right away. Rounded to the nearest hundredth is 88.89 years. Is my answer for number 16. For number 17, given that secant of theta is the square root of 89 over 9, and sine of theta is less than 0. So if secant is positive and sine is negative, that's going to be in quadrant 4. Secant is a reciprocal of cosine, so cosine is positive and sine is negative. If you follow all students take calc, that's in quadrant 4. Now secant is hypotenuse over adjacent. It's the reciprocal of cosine. So the hypotenuse is the square root of 89, and adjacent is going to be 9. Now, if this is your origin, this would be a positive 9, so that's okay. To figure out the other side, you would do Pythagorean theorem. So Pythagorean theorem, 9 squared plus that missing side squared is equal to the square root of 89 squared. You end up that x is equal to the square root of 8, which is actually 2 rad 2. So this is 2 rad 2, but it is negative because you head down. So it's negative 2 rad 2. So find the exact value of tangent. The tangent of theta is the opposite, which is this, divided by the adjacent, which is 9. Okay? On your paper, if you had negative square root of 8 over 9, your answer is correct. It's just not in simplest form. So it doesn't say anything about simplest form, so that would be marked correct on your exams. Okay, number 18. I heard a lot of questions about this. Nowhere in this question does it say anything about doing it algebraically. So you're going to type this side into y1, this side into y2, and then you're going to do second trace number 5, and that gives you the intersection points. But now remember, whenever it says f of x equals g of x, that is only the x value that I want as an answer. So you actually have 2 points where they meet, rounded to the nearest hundredth. One of them would be 0.62, and the other one should be 5.48. Again, you are not doing that algebraically. If you try setting them equal to each other, you're not going to be able to solve that. And number 19, determine if it's a factor. So you would use long division Or you could do synthetic division, or you could plug in -3 in order to get your remainder. So this is x plus 3 divided by 2x to the third plus 4x squared plus 0x minus 5. So you could do that. If you do that, you would get 2x. This is your final answer. You would get 2x squared minus 2x plus 6. And then your remainder, you get -23 divided by x plus 3. That's what you would get as your answer. So you could do it that way. If you know synthetic division, you could also do it that way. I also want to show you, we talked about this a while ago, especially we really went into this more with the midterm. You could plug in -3 into x, right? This is your remainder theorem. You could plug -3 into x, and that'll tell you what the remainder is. So when I plug in -3, if I do 2 times -3 to the third plus 4 times -3 squared minus 5, you end up getting -23, which is the remainder. Now neither one of these would get me full credit because this says determine if it's a factor. Your answer would be no, it's not, because the remainder is not equal to 0. No, because the remainder is not 0. Don't just say no because it has a remainder, right? Because everything has a remainder, it's whether it's 0 or not. And don't say no because the remainder is -23. The reason why I don't want you to say that is because if your remainder is wrong and you say that in the explanation, then it's like you're double wrong, kind of. And the last question we have is a 3 by 3. So we haven't done this in a while. So for this 3 by 3, I'm going to look at getting rid of my x variable in a and b, in my equations a and b. If you do something different, that's totally fine. You still could end up with the same answer. Okay, you still should end up at the same answer. X plus 8y plus z equals 9. So I'm going to do 1 and 2 first. So 4x minus 4y minus 9z is equal to 13. So if I multiply this first equation, again, I told you I want to get rid of x, is -4. Multiply first equation by -4. This is now -4x minus 32y minus 4z is equal to -36. The other equation, 4x minus 4y minus 9z is equal to 13. So now when I add down, my x's cancel. This is -36y minus 13z is equal to -23. That is equation A for me. Okay, yours could be different. You still should get the same final answer as me. Then when I do 1 and 3, x plus 8y plus z is equal to 9. And then -x plus 8y minus z is equal to 7. So this is why I wanted to get rid of x, because when I have 1 and 3, it's pretty easy because I already have additive inverse. I already have +1 and -1. So I can just add straight down. Now the nice thing about this question is that when I'm about to find my equation B, I get 16y. These cancel is equal to 16. So I don't have to do elimination again because my equation, my second equation over here, leads me to one of my variables. Y is equal to 1. Now I can take this and plug this into this equation. So -36 times 1 is -36 minus 13z is equal to -23. When I add 36, I get 13. So z is equal to -1. Now I take this and I plug that into one of my originals. So if I just do the first one, I have x plus 8 times 1 is 8 plus z is -1 equals 9. So x plus 7 equals 9. Subtract 7, x is equal to 2. So my final answer here is 2, 1, -1. Okay? Okay, it gets parentheses around. Don't put brackets around it. Okay, if you have any questions, extra help will be on Thursday, March 21st. Have a good night.